Howdy, y'all. GooseFathr here. We have patch 1.0 today, season 1 of the Bazaar. I just dropped a video talking about the monetization changes. I'm very excited about them. We're going to move past those really quickly in this video because I want to get to the meat of the patch notes in this particular video. And I'm going to move kind of quickly, but I will definitely talk about and elaborate some changes that aren't obvious. I made sure to play the game a little bit, test out a couple of things that weren't terribly obvious based on the patch notes themselves. So I'm not only going to go through what's listed here, I'm also going to have some kind of like hidden changes that they haven't announced. The first hidden change that they haven't announced, which is super cool, new art and voice lines. Like the art looks sharper almost everywhere. There's new voice lines for most of the heroes. There's new music for a couple of places. Yeah, it's awesome. But we're going to jump into the patch notes. We're going to explain this from a pig perspective, how it matters to you. And even when we're going through the other heroes' skills and stuff, it definitely affects us because a lot of those items are on monsters that we fight. And the amount of monster changes that aren't talked about in the patch notes are pretty huge because they messed with a lot of monster items. So we're going to jump in. So, new hero Mac. Mac is available for 3,000 gems instead of 1,500. Good God. That's a lot. The first and second hero discounts I have not seen yet. They say it still applies to all heroes, but I don't know if that was a flat number or if that was a percentage. So now that Mac is 3,000 instead of 1,500, does that mean that like you get 50% off, meaning it's still more expensive? I'm not sure, and that could kind of suck. But generally, I think we're going to get a lot more gems now than we used to get. I talk about that in the monetization video, so I won't go into it too much here. So we'll see. That's expensive for a hero, but he's totally purchasable with in-game currency. That's fantastic. Expansions can no longer be toggled off. This is huge. And we'll talk about this at the same time. Expansions from previous season, including open beta, are automatically granted to all players after they rotate out of the prize pass. This means if you did not pay for the expansions before, you have them now. Congratulations. You don't have to pay gems for them. You just have them. You have the Vanessa and Pig expansion packs from the last one. And the two new packs, the Dooley and Vanessa pack that they're announcing right now, you will have them in a month as well, even if you don't pay for them with gems or you don't pay for them with the prize pass. If you buy the prize pass with cash, you will unlock the two expansions after a certain number of things like normal, like they talked about, or like they did the last time, but it is a flat scale of XP instead of an exponential growth curve. So I think you're going to hit these inside of a couple of days, rather than like towards the end of the season. I think you're going to unlock these very, very fast if you pay for the prize pass. Instead of that, you can also pay 3,000 gems to unlock a pack now and not spend real money. That's an insane number, but it's in-game currency. So free-to-play players will get all the cards a month late, so you'll never like perpetually fall behind. And if you save up your gems, you can splurge every once in a while for a pack that looks interesting to you. I think free-to-play players probably should just keep saving their gems to keep getting the heroes as they come out with the cost of the heroes at 3,000. We'll see if you're able to get much further than that. So I'm not sure you're still going to be accessing these in the month in which they come out, but at least you aren't going to perpetually fall behind, which is the problem we had. Sorry, I'm forgetting the game, but there was a game that did that, and it was kind of awful. And so we're not going to have that particular problem. So that's great. Generally, I'm pretty happy about the monetization, but I have a whole video we go into detail. The Tempo store offers daily cosmetics. I've already spent a bunch of gems buying one, and I'm going to spend a bunch of gems buying the next one. it's everything I wanted and more. I'm very happy about that. We now have the daily free rank ticket back. What they don't talk about here is that the prize passes offer much less tickets than it used to. It would be 2 tickets almost every single tier. Now it's 1 ticket every other tier, and in between every other tier is chests. But because it's a flat amount of XP, and because they increase the amount of XP, and you can see that down here, I think it's going to net us getting a few more tickets than we used to get if you play an average amount. If you play daily and more than like 2 games a day, I think you're going to end up with more tickets than you had before. And more importantly, you're going to end up with a few free chests. So even if you were a bad free-to-play player and could never win any chests with your tickets, you're going to get some chests through the prize pass, which I think is great, because the old way of only being able to get gems by virtue of actually having winning runs inside of ranked was pretty bad for some newer players. So cool, awesome. Again, I'm not going to go through these too detailed because I covered them in the other video. Yeah, it says free track featuring 60 base tiers, but at tier 60 it says unlock when you get there, unlock more when you get there. So I'm not sure if that's only for the pay for or if it's also for free to play. But once you get through all 60 tiers, I don't know what happens. It might happen again where it just doesn't make sense to, like, you don't feel like you get any value from playing anymore. That would really suck. But the language suggests that it will keep opening up, although this language here does not. I'm not sure which one wins. They also have cosmetics in the expansion pack, so you get the 2 expansion packs early, and then you unlock cosmetics, and there's a pretty awesome pig cosmetic at the very end. They might actually get me to spend money on the damn prize pass because of that, because that's the only place you'll get me is on really cool cosmetics. And since I don't feel like it's tragically pay to win anymore, I don't have a moral stance on spending money on the game. I'm actually super excited too, so I'm going to skip over the rest because that's all my monetization video. They made some changes to challenges, so hopefully the daily and weekly challenges won't have some of the really stupid impossible ones, but we'll have to see. I haven't looked too closely at that. End of combat replay recap. What this basically means is it used to be your item is sitting there in front of you, and then you could hit one of the buttons to recap or one of the buttons to leave. And so you often would like grab your item because you see an item, you grab an item, and then it would like leave and you wouldn't be able to look at the recap or the replay. I did this all the time. My chat got mad at me because you all wanted to see the recap and I wanted to grab my loot, and those two were at odds. Now you'll just be in a static screen that kind of shows both boards. And you could flip and see the numbers like always. You could hit the recap. And then when you leave, you'll then see the item that dropped if it was a monster encounter. I think that's a pretty good change. It'll take a minute to get used to. It feels like a couple extra clicks, but it actually prevents you from like losing access to data that you might have wanted to have access to. So I actually really like that change. New content, Mandala, and they refer to this a little later too, but it's a new encounter. It basically says if you have a small item, a medium, or a large item, it'll have the option depending on each, but it will be randomly transform your leftmost item into another item of the same tier and size, right? So it'll have a small item if you have a small, a medium if you have a medium, a large if you have a large, all three if you have all three. But you get to pick specifically which size item to upgrade, and it'll be your leftmost of that thing. And so if you have a bronze fixer-upper, you can randomly switch that out for another bronze large item. I played around with this a little bit. It retains the enchant. So I think the number one use of this is that you will get a bad board of small item enchants, but you'll pick the one with the coolest enchant. So I did this with, I think I had the mace, the pepper spray, but it had multicast on it. And then I went to Mandala and got to keep, every time I went to them, I got to keep rolling to see if I could get something cooler, and eventually I ended up with a double matchbox. So, and you see Mandala a lot in the early days. So this is a way to kind of redeem and fix your enchanted item that sucks. However, it loses any added value or stacked flat damage, fire, whatever that you put on the item. So if you have been going to Curio and adding a bunch of power to the item or cooldown reduction or anything like that, all of that evaporates and you just get like a new item of the same tier without any of that. So you can't value stack on a large item and then hopefully swap that into a property and retain all the value stacking. Unfortunately, that automatically falls off. Probably makes sense, but still kind of sad. Would have been cool that you could keep like shuffling the property until you find a property that's usable with the value you put it on. Especially since you can get an enchant on something and you're like, oh, this is a crap enchant for my fixer, but this would be an amazing enchant on skyscraper or a subscraper or whatever, and then you start rolling for the new one. But since it drops your value, you kind of can't do it with properties. I think this is only going to be used very much in the early game or way late game when you just have nothing else to do. And it's probably only going to be used much in the early game for your random enchant item. I don't, it's just not a great use of value otherwise. Tatiana, new merchant that sells toys. Cool. I have not found her yet, so I don't have a total finger on the pulse sense of like the kind of stuff that she's going to have exactly, but they did remove Caltrop, the toy tag from Caltrops, which they should, because Caltrops is a weapon of war. I don't know why that had a toy tag in the first place. So you will not be able to use the tiny item pool to fish for Caltrops in the same way that with Orion we use his tiny item pool to fish for Crook. So that's unfortunate, but totally fair. Okay, PvP board swap. This is really cool and also deeply incentivizes monetizing cosmetics. When you go to a fight, you go to their board versus your board. PvE encounters, you still get to see your own board. Cool. PvP encounters, you go see their board. So I think that's a cool way to kind of show off, your ghost is showing off your board or whatever. I don't know. It at least makes it slightly viewable, whereas right now all your cosmetics are only yours to see unless you stream to the world for some ungodly reason. On sell enchantments, loot items have been reduced in power. This is basically like if you got enchanted truffles, or if you got enchanted gumballs, like from your gumball machine, and you'd sell those and they would give some flat power to your items, they no longer give as much because you were getting like hasted gumballs, and then you were getting one haste item up to, give one item 50 seconds worth of haste, which was really stupid and broken. So they modified that. I don't know to what, but I'm guessing it's going to be to 0.5 or 0.2 or some fraction of a thing. So it takes 4 or 5 gumballs to get an actual second worth of power, which is fair, makes sense. Freeze, haste, slow simplified some of the targeting rules around these effects. Not entirely sure what that means, but we will see a lot of changes in the patch notes where freeze is no longer scaling in seconds, instead it's scaling in targets. So most freeze effects seem to only be 1 second long, but they hit a lot more targets. And so I think freeze is being used a lot more as a mechanic to trigger instead of a mechanic to lockdown, which is interesting. Not as useful for us, unfortunately, since we don't do a lot of triggering in the way Vanessa and Dooley do, but it does mean they're going to have to do a lot more work to perma-freeze your board, so that's nice. So we'll see. Fix an issue where a certain amount of regeneration provide excess regen when combined with other effects. Cool, didn't notice that. And then lifesteal recovery now counts as healing. That's pretty great. So we have effects that, like when you heal, charge an item, or stuff like that. When you heal, do X. And so now our lifesteal weapons are going to apply to that, and now Mac has additional ways of adding lifesteal to items in weapons, and so that's going to count as your heal effects. That's going to charge your weights. That's going to do all that kind of crap. So that's great. I don't know if it means lifesteal items count as heal items, though. So we have a skill that the first X number of times you use a weapon, charge a heal item. I don't know if that means that when you use a weapon, you will charge a lifesteal weapon, because that would be really cool. But but I don't know if the healing also affects the tag concept or not. I doubt it does. B1, B2 spawns up today 8. One thing they do not mention here, but is very clear upon playing the game, is that they didn't just move B1, B2 to day 8, they moved bronze to day 8. So now in the shops, you will still see bronze items all the way up till day 8, whereas day 6 used to be the last day that we can see them. It's an okay change. I'm not sure how I feel about B1, B2, but I really like the bronze. The bronze is still very rare, but you can still, like, I upgraded my bronze at Lottle on day 7, which was normally I'm like, all right, this is just bronze for the rest of my life. And I saw it on day 7. I was really excited. So that's cool. I wish they had some mechanic to make them more common if you have a bronze item of the same type so that you could fish for upgrades a little bit more frequently, but maybe that would be too broken. I don't know. Anyway, so now you'll be annoyed by B1, B2 being on day 8 when you have like all gold items. Cool. Bazaar accounts options now are ordered consistently, because I don't know if you ever noticed this, but like the XP option would be on the left, then in the middle, then on the right. And so you would always have to hunt back for where your damn XP option was, so that's fixed. Hospital and medical cabinet can now drop regen items. These are you get a free freeze item, you get a free heal item. Those types of encounters all have their own name, and we're not really used to them because we almost never grab them. But 2 of those encounters that are a small heal item or just a heal item now can also have a small regen or just a regen item. They also have always, or no, I don't think those ones are. Yeah, no, they can. Those can drop items from another hero or at least from another monster, because we can go to freeze items and get Cryo Sleeve, which is one of my favorite items to play around with when I get in a run. And so this might mean that we'll be able to pick up heal and regen items from Mac, because he has a lot of regen items from those 2. So we'll see how that works out. Jungle Ruins, Vanessa Plunder for Treasure no longer drops loot items. I don't know what it drops in its stead, so that's cool. Lost Crate got nerfed into Oblivion. Open It is now just a medium item instead of the upgrade hammer. So they got rid of the automatic silver upgrade hammer. We can still probably fish that through when you get your level up and you choose a loot skill, or through the encounter that lets you get a loot item, or for us through Boomerang if you actually remember to put it on your board, which good luck to you. Hopefully you do that more than I do. But they nerfed it, so the number of, double matchbox runs will be significantly less, which I think is a good positive change for the game. Strange Mushroom, Trade It no longer gives loot items. So I don't know if you ever used this in the past, but it says get a neutral item. That generally just meant get something from Curio. Get one of the items from Curio's shop. Because it was Strange Mushroom only showed up in the bronze days. Now it means get a Curio item minus loot. So you won't get truffles, you'll just get the, hopefully the knee brace or the shadow cloak, but he also has a lot of absolute dog tier trash. So still probably not good, but not as bad. Monster updates. Okay, this is not all of the monster updates at all, and I will talk about them a lot as we go through. I'll talk about them as we get to the items that affect monsters, and I'll throw them in here or there. But Blood Reef Captain is positioned as items because I don't know if you paid attention, but some of them need to be in particular order in order to gain positive effect, and they weren't, and so he was just an idiot, and now at least his items all charge each other the way they're supposed to. Joyful Jack traded in his succulents for a floor spike, and one of his succulents went bad. So Joyful Jack should be difficult, but he's not. The floor spike is a 20 damage item, 10 second, 20 damage, does 2 poison damage, and it charges 2 seconds for every time you use every time your opponent, which is us, uses a weapon. That doesn't sound too bad. 20 damage, 2 poison. Except Poppyfield got updated recently so that every time Jack uses a weapon, let me look that up, actually. Let's pull that up because I forget exactly how it's worded. So how Bazaar, Poppy. When you use a weapon, poison, and then your weapons have damage equal to 50, 70, 100% of the poison on your enemy. So this weapon is not a use, or no, it is a use. It's every 10 seconds it gets used, and then it's also charged. So not only does it have 2 flat poison, it's also going to do an additional 4, so it's poisoning you for 6 every time it goes off, and then it's scaling in damage based on the total number of poison on you. And Joyful Jack does other poison to you. So that weapon theoretically would get stronger and stronger, and since it poisons you when it hits, the more you use weapons, the more poison you do to yourself. That should mean Joyful Jack got a lot harder. He did not, for 2 reasons. The first one is Floor Spike is bugged. It doesn't actually work. I'm not sure if it works if you use it on Mac, but Joyful Jack's doesn't work. I hit him quite a bit with my Atlatl to the face, and it never charged once. So that's a bummer, so we don't get to see how that really works. And for another thing, he has just a pitiful amount of hit points for the level, and so as long as you have a decent amount of damage and you're not doing, some weird, if you're not doing like weak yo-yo spam against his face, you should be fine. So he's still pretty much a kitten. Frost Street Champion Nitrogen Hammer is now gold tier. Cool. That didn't seem to make him any harder. He's not particularly hard in the first place. Lich downshifted the tiers on a few of his items. I took one for the team, and I fought Lich with a pretty good Atlatl board. It wasn't nuclear yet, but it was decent. I did have to use a Gonjo to get Atlatl up to nuclear, which was still the mistake it always is, which is if you use any non-weapon item, it still charges Necronomicon. I got rocked, as you would expect. This is bait. It's always bait. Every time they say they nerf Lich, it's just to get a few more idiots to kill themselves fighting Lich. So still don't fight Lich. Lich is awful. If you have an all-weapons board that is 2 days at least stronger, or Bob, a well-geared Bob, even with non-weapon spam, can often kill Lich because of the single cycle. You freeze at the halfway point as you're eating his face, and if Bob can kill him with 1 series of Bob bites, and you can do the math on whether or not he's up to par or not, then he still can beat Lich. Otherwise, do not fight Lich. Lich is still a monster. Mimic has a cool Gains the Ravenous. The first time you fall below half health each fight, destroy an item for the fight. It's just ambiguously worded, but it works the way that most things do that are worded this way. It destroys an enemy item, not just a random item. I got lucky enough to fight Mimic already. I got the skill. Nobody ever got me to half health after that. But Mimic himself only destroyed my item, and I've confirmed with other people that it's only destroying an enemy item. So, all right, we're into the pig changes. We're gonna go a little faster here. Atlas Stone. 6-second cooldown instead of 7-second. Awesome. Atlas Stone, I really want to be a thing. It's only usable in Pig's Gym. It's still probably only usable in Pig's Gym at 6 seconds. And even that's not like greatly usable in Pig's Gym, because if you do Pig's Gym properly, Pig's Gym hit, your Atlatl smashes them in the face and they're dead inside of the next Pig's Gym cast. If they're not dead inside of the first Pig's Gym cast after day like 10 or 12, then you lose. So I'm not, then the effect of Atlas Stone doubling after it swings kind of doesn't make any sense. So I don't know. I think this is still a useless item. Beehive damage scaling increased, essentially just doubled at all levels. I think that I think that this is cool. I think that you can get away with running a small beehive setup, beehive and 2 or 3 bees with like a defensive setup behind it. Could be pretty cool. You can try to property cycle to power up bees. I still don't think it's going to be like a main board, but I think some hipsters are going to get this thing off the ground now. So, and I'm one of them. We're going to play with this a lot on stream. We're going to see if we can get this somewhere. It's double damage. It might be usable. I'm glad they did it. We'll see if it's strong enough. Caltrops no longer has the toy tag, as no weapons of war should. Cool. Glow sign. Several of our property amplifiers got nerfed to be 50 to 100% of adjacent items value instead of 1 to 2 times. So functionally halved. So closed sign now gives regen half of what it did before. I feel like every time Crypt comes out with a video on things that we've already used and already knew were a little broken, but as soon as Crypt comes out with a video, they think maybe everyone does start using it. I think everyone starts using it, and then they have to nerf it. So he just had a golden close sign pacifist board that popped the hell off, and so they had to nerf it into the ground. So a Crypt the Great Destroyer strikes again. Crystal Bonsai down to 4 seconds from 5 seconds. You should not run this on your board in PvP fights because you buy this, you put it on your board, you fight a monster, you sell it. That is what this item is for. I don't know why it's cooldown is slower. It can do nothing other than give me value when I beat a monster with it, and I would use it exactly the same. Weird. Golf clubs. Damage scaling has gone up. This is one of those hidden effects that is it good? Not really. Maybe. I mean, you can now use it early with a bunch of spam that you're setting up for a matchbox board and you don't know what your weapon is. And then it'll power golf clubs enough to like maybe win on a day 2 or 3 or 4 where it definitely lost before if you have a lot of heal on your board. So cool. Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think it's needed. But the downside, what is hidden in this, is Retiree is now way stronger. Retiree was always pretty strong. If you went long, if you went all the way to the Sandstorm, then that final whack he got with you with the club was like half your hit points, and so you had to be pretty far ahead to win that fight. That final whack is going to one-shot you, and so I don't think it's a Sandstorm fight anymore. I think this is now a clock. It's probably like a 30-second clock, but it's a clock. So if you are doing very slow damage and you want to pick Retiree because he's not the next guy who got unbelievably buffed at the same day, Prince Marianus, who you do not want to fight with a lot of boards, then he's no longer the free cakewalk that he was. He can actually get grumpy with his golf clubs. So just be careful there. Hotstone's regen got nerfed. I haven't been able to play much with this item, so I don't have a lot of thoughts on it. It got buffed at Diamond, but nerfed at Bronze and Silver. Same at Gold. Cool. Hot Ice Cream Truck now has the food type, which, sure. I don't think we eat it, but we eat the things it has. So now we're getting into some metaphysics territory in terms of what does a tag mean, but I'm fine with that. And this is one of those freeze changes that happens a lot later in the patch notes, which is instead of it increasing the amount of freeze, it increases the number of freeze. That's not great for us. We don't tend to do... Sorry, Goose is wanting to come up. That's why I'm doing this weird thing with my hand. Come on, Goose! That's not something we do very often, which is use freeze as a trigger for other things. But, maybe now the shatter ability will not be unusable. We'll see. And it can now be enchanted with deadly, so it now can have, I think deadly is the crit chance. So, cool. Yeah, it made Ice Cream Truck a little bit weaker for us in terms of actually having lockdown, which you didn't really use it for. But the upside of this change is it now makes Ice Cream Truck more dangerous for Ice Club. And we get a lot of this happening. So yeah, I said it that we don't do it very often, but there is one notable exception, and it's the Ice Club build. If you manage to get yourself an Ice Club, Ice Cream Truck can now freeze 3 items every time it pops off. And, you could get it to pop off every 3 or 4 seconds if you have a spammy board. So that's pretty strong. So that's cool. Igloo freeze 1, 2, and 3 items for 1 second from one item. Goose. From one item for 1, 2, 3 seconds. Same change. And then when you freeze shield 50, 70, 100. This looks like a nerf, but it's not since you're freezing 3 times instead of 1 time. So it's actually more total shielding. This has actually changed... Chili Charles, I think he's the one that has it, to be quite a bit stronger, and he does a bunch of other freezes, so his shield is now significant. So he's now a DPS check. He always was a tiny bit of a DPS check, but like it just meant you have to have it, not that you have to have much. I think he's gonna be. I think he's gonna be hard now. You have to have a lot of DPS, or you just have to have enough just to get through his shield and have more hit points than him at the start of the fight, which often you don't against monsters. So I think he's going to be harder. Drum scales damage harder now, 5, 10, and 15. That's a very good, very needed change. I'm not sure Drum is good still. Drum was just like significantly worse than Jim and used with the exact same items that Jim was used with, and therefore it was except Jim could also make use of caltrops and Drum couldn't. And so not sure if this makes it competitive with Jim, but at least it's usable, and it has a different style of scaling than Jim does. You don't have to do value scaling to use it. So I'm hoping this means in the mid game it's stronger. It's something that you could use as a stand-in as you're buffing up your Jim and your Jim doesn't have value, or it doesn't have your balcony attached to it yet, or whatever. I don't think it's going to be a huge late game change, but I'll play with it and we'll see. Karui got kind of the same treatment that golf clubs did, which is its damage scaling goes up and its regular damage goes up. Its flat damage went down a little bit at the higher tiers, but its damage scaling went up. And they lowered the cooldown by a second. I actually played with an enchanted one of these early at silver. It felt decent. It felt like I wasn't ashamed of having it on my board. I wasn't proud either. Yeah. So Landscraper and Vineyard both got redesigned. Cooldown 7 seconds, shield 200. Your shield items have shield equal to this item's value. And then it has the ledger treatment. When you sell 10 items, give this 5, 10, and 15 value. So, and then Vineyard is the same thing, but in heal, because those two have always been kind of similar items. So you'll immediately think, oh, cool, I could use this with a fixer-upper board. And maybe, but I don't know. You're going to put this on the far side of your ledger. You're going to be doing ledger shenanigans anyway, so this is going to inherit some value. It is going to get a decent amount of value, and then that is flat shield being added to your fixer. But fixer's doing 4 times its value as shield, not 4 times its shield as shield. So this is flat shield that's not being multiplied by fixer. So just be aware, it's not going to be the same as adding value to fixer is in terms of the raw power outage that you get, but it is going to be another item that you can put on your board that gives a lot to fixer, and it's going to scale naturally alongside your other stuff. The only problem is that this, you'd want to start scaling it fairly early, and so this is another large item to have in your stash with a ledger fixer stash setup, which is already brutally tight. And so it makes it almost impossible to do the encounters like chocolate bars that allow you to do a lot of heavy buying and selling. So I don't know. There's going to be a lot of opportunity cost in the amount of space this takes up. So we'll have to see how that plays. Obviously, everyone's going to try it because it seems like a natural synergy. I'm just not sure how powerful it is compared to just all the usual suspects of everything else that we can put on that board that's pretty strong. Ledger value reduced 4, 8, 12 instead of 5, 10, 15. Absolutely needed. Ledger is broken. Once you get Ledger to gold, you have infinite money. This is fine. This is great. I'm happy with it. It does mean our general power levels for our properties have come down a little bit more, and our property builds have already been a little gutted. They're not super strong like they once were, so they're going to be even a little more niche and hard to get off the ground. That said, when you have all the pieces for properties, and they still, once they are off the ground, are such late game juggernauts that it kind of makes up for the fact that you had to lose early to get it. So I don't know. But we use Ledger for a lot more than just property scaling. We used it to get infinitely rich and scale our cash cannon to over 6,000. 11 times now I've been able to do that. So that is way too consistent. I think Cash Cannon probably should be nerfed more than Ledger should, but Ledger was one of the culprits. Lumbors, okay, 7 instead of 9, which is considerably faster. It's now the same speed as most of our mid-sized weapons, and it has 10 flat. So it's better at bronze. And then it goes from 2468 to 510, 15, 20. And it stacks that damage on the other things. So Lumbors might actually be usable at bronze and silver to add damage to your other weapons. I actually think this is great. I actually think they might end up on my board before day 3 or 4. After that, I'll still be deeply ashamed. But they might actually have some functional usefulness early, and I won't have to sit Shiva every time they make it on my board. So Matchbox cooldown back up to 5 seconds from 4. It went up, it went down, it went up. I don't know if I like this change. I think this is in response to the double Matchbox meta more than it is to Matchbox proper. Um, I think Matchbox already fell off pretty hard if you didn't have double Matchboxes. I think everything else being bonked still made Matchbox pretty rough to run. So I think it feels pretty dead. I don't want to run a Matchbox board anymore. I didn't want to in the past, to be honest with you. I just kind of did it sometimes because if I duped it, it meant I got 7 early wins, which got fixed just by the last crate changes. So I don't know. This feels rough. Matchbox might be dead. Monocle from 7 seconds to 6 seconds. The only time I ever run this thing is on a hat board where I have apropos chapeau, and it is, and I need an apparel item. So that's a pretty limited use case. So I don't know. Cool. I guess it sucks less. Also, I will have it on a cargo shorts board because it's both a tool and an apparel, but mostly just the tool since chapeau is already apparel. So yeah, but often I will be running shorts and apropos at the same time, so I won't even need monocle in those cases. It's just like, yeah, I don't know. It's an item. It exists. I don't care. Open side. Weapon properties adjacent have damage equal. This is the same nerf as we saw on close sign. 50 and 100% instead of 1 to 2 times. It's a 50% reduction in its overall power to weapon and shield properties. I've had a couple of use cases where this just becomes disgusting. It's still going to be. I'm fine with this change. It's a very niche item that you don't use very often, but when you use it, it's pretty strong. So I think that's fine. Pepper spray has been nerfed at, or no, increased at bronze and nerfed at silver and gold for flat damage. I don't think anyone's been rocking a gold pepper spray, and I don't think 50 damage at diamond has been breaking any particular boards. So I'm really confused by the later half of this change. But the front half is because it's one of the items we tend to get a decent amount as a bronze item from the shops, and it sucks. And so they're trying to make it so it's at least marginally usable on our day 1 board. Fine with that. Pitchfork, new item. Deal 50, 75, 100, 125 flat damage. It's a 10-second or 11-second cooldown. It is slow. And at the start of each day, get a truffle. If you have a property, get an additional truffle. This item is pretty useless. Start of the day, get a truffle. We already have vending machine, which will give you a truffle, a chocolate bar, and a coin at the start of each day, which is going to be net the same amount of money as this gives you and a little bit extra heal from the chocolate bar and more fodder for things like ledger, dog, silk scarf, etc. And you have to have a property as an activator just to get this up to 2. You would think, oh, this is great for property builds because I'll keep getting constant value that I can stack on my properties. You would be wrong because we already have trouble fitting vending machine. When you're running a property build, you have so much stash space devoted to your ledger, to your property, to your rewards card, and everything else that is swapping in, like your stained glass and whatnot, that's swapping in to take. Yeah, so no, that's wrong. We don't have the stash space for this to make any sense for us. You're going to get it for free early every once in a while. You'll keep it around for a little while. You'll sell off the truffles and then eventually it to make money, and that's what it's going to be used for. That's kind of it. Okay, spiky shield, 10, 15, 20, 25. Sure. Okay. I don't understand. Again, hopefully it'll be slightly more usable on your early board, but it won't. Don't use it. It's 10-second cast time. That is not something you should use until you have the shield activator for it. But sure. The vineyard redesign we already talked about. Same thing as Landscraper, only it's heal. And so a little weirder to use in terms of like things that it pairs naturally with. It would pair naturally with a subscraper board. If you happen to figure out a way to damagify your subscraper, which usually is just an enchant, so it's a little less frequent you'll find use out of this. But it will give a bunch of heal to your regular heal items, so it might actually be pretty powerful on a traditional weights board, or something like that, in terms of just giving you a lot of raw defensive power. Still, we just don't have good ways of converting our heal into damage, and I don't think the golf club changes are enough to make that a difference. Yo-yo down to 4 seconds from 5, fantastic. Diamond yo-yo is now can be infinite again, theoretically. That's great. I think that change needed to happen. So that's it for the pig items. I'm going to start going through the others. I will do them very quickly, or maybe even skip some, because, not all of them apply to me. If you really, really care about these other item changes, check out someone else who does those heroes better and will know better. But what I will point out a lot in these changes are how they affect monsters that are very much going to affect your play style. So I'm going to pause and be right back. Okay, I'm back. Cannonade starts at silver from gold, and they've increased the damage. I'm cool with that. Kind of a cool item. It's cool that it starts earlier. I generally like them making things available a little bit earlier on the whole. Just means that you can pivot into some boards sooner. You get a little bit more things to play with in the medium game. I very much like that. One thing I do not like is Catfish. When this gains haste, this gains 3, 6, 9, 12 from 1, 2, 3, 4. This is going to be oppressive as hell. I understand that they're trying to make this kind of late game viable to be on a pufferfish board, whereas right now it wasn't. But the early game of this is going to suck. This plus the beach ball on a day 1 board is just, you lose very, very badly. This is a little terrifying to me. I'm not sure how I feel. I know how I feel. It's not good. That's too much. That's significantly too much. You're going to hate Catfish in no time. I promise. It is what it is. Diving helmet redesigned. Shield 25 when you use an aquatic item. This gains 5, 10, 15 shield for the fight. Adjacent items are aquatic, so this is a still kind of turn adjacent items into aquatic, and then it becomes a aquatic themed barrel, which is fine. When you adjacent items become aquatic, I think is the important part of this, because it just makes you be able to make more things fall into that theme. And yeah, it just gives you a lot more tools. And if you've looked at the new items, which I won't cover because they're not in the patch notes today, but if you looked at the new Vanessa items, they have a lot of friend stuff, a lot of aquatic stuff. So this is just kind of playing into that, which is fun. Electric Eels, on the other hand, cooldown 6 from 7, damage 50 from 25. Does it make this a great item that people are going to play a lot? No. Does this suddenly break a monster encounter? Oh, yes. Prince Marianus just got fairly terrifying. So that was the first diamond encounter you would run into that you'd just be like, cool, I'm always taking it. The only times you wouldn't take it is if you had like a weak matchbox board, because when you spam, he charges up and does more damage to you over time. But generally, if you had a mediocre matchbox board, you were still beating him. That is not true anymore. I just fought him with... I had a golden crook on day 3. Don't ask. It was a run. I had like a 130 at Lottle with a silver Ganjo next to it. I had a day 5 crook board, right? Maybe even day 6 crook board. And he got me to like 30% health. He is... busted. This is terrifying. Be afraid. be very, very afraid. Narwhal also got buffed, not very much, but it dropped a second. It increased some flat damage to it. But Eels is the real thing. But both of those together are on that same board. So, yeah, Prince Marianus, Giga buffed. Shadow buffed, it isn't really mentioned because they don't tell you how these things affect those boards. He's terrifying now. Pay very close attention to when you pick that fight. You want to have kind of flat weapons that aren't doing a lot of spamming, or you want to have Bob be able to kill his entire hit point pool in one Bob swing, and otherwise you just want to avoid him. Fishing Rod is down to 5 seconds from 9, and it just hastes the aquatic item to the right for 2 instead of scaling. This makes it a little bit more usable on day 1 boards. It actually makes it an item that someone will put on their board day 1 to haste their adjacent aquatic item. And the thing they're going to be hasting is catfish. So now we also have to see fishing rod catfish boards take our lunch money in the morning. So, oof. This is fun and a great change. I think making the items that sit in your stash get a little bit of early game usage is great. I just hate catfish. I hate what they did to catfish. This is now 2 easy haste items that you can get day 1 that you can chuck on your board to make catfish terrifying. So I'm a little nervous about that. Jite is like a little dagger that stabbed and did a little bit of slow. The damage went up. It looks like it doubled. And then the damage scaling for when you slow doubled. This wasn't used very often. This seems like a lot. We'll see. I have a feeling this is going to be pretty good day 1, day 2 now. There's a couple of slow items that are still on a weapons board. And, like Hook or whatever when you haven't gotten great selections yet. Yeah, so, but it also might just make it usable in a slow board. So, interesting. We'll see. Katana at Lottle at Home has been reduced back to 2 seconds, and it has had its flat damage reduced a teeny tiny bit. So this is great. We would sometimes get Katana from the bouncer fight, and at 2 seconds, it could absolutely go on your crook board if you haven't managed to get it Lottle yet. Sometimes it was a good filler. It was, ever since the bonk at 2 seconds, it will now be faster than your flail. So it'll get 3 swings in instead of 3 swings in 6 seconds instead of 3 swings in 7 from your flail. So this will be maybe a flail replacement depending on the tier you have it at. And if you still have in damage combat scaling, flail might have more flat per the swings. But if you're using Gonjo to get your Atlatl up to speed, then you only care about the speed of the weapon instead of its flat. So we rarely see this, but every once in a great while we pick it up. Or you might pick up an enchanted one I've done a couple times from Dig. And at 2 seconds, it can go on our crook board. At 3, it couldn't. So, cool. And I'm sure other characters like Vanessa, who actually has the item, cares about the change, but, you don't come to me for for Vanessa feedback. Lockbox. Value scaling 369. This was almost never used. It gains more damage now, so now they might have... And with the expansion, there's one other item like this, but Vanessa is starting to get inert items other than just the portrait and the hat, the disguise. She's starting to get items that just buff the board in certain ways, and this is kind of going towards that. I like it. This item was just unusable before. I don't know if it's usable yet or not, but at least it puts it in the ballpark of being close, so that's cool. Narwhal gets a little bit of damage improvement, makes it from 4 seconds. This is honestly decent. You'll see people running this day 1 and 2 decent amount now. Pop Snappers gains the toy type because, sure. Primordial Depth Charge has been renamed to Elemental Depth Charge. Ramrod, Deadly Ramrod, adjacent ammo from item crit bonus increased to 50. So the crit Ramrod enchantment used to only give 25 every time it charged an item. Now it gives it 50. So that's cool. It's still like Crook gives all of our square items 50% at when it's deadly. and Ramrod only gives adjacent items crit, and only when it's used, so it takes a while. It could get a single item up to 100, but it takes a long time. So this feels like it brings it more in line with the power level of that enchant. I'm cool with that. Repeater got significantly stronger. We might see more Repeater. Repeater is something that fires when you use other ammo items. It was a little weak compared to other ammo items, so I didn't see it on those boards very often. So this might mean I'll see it at gold or silver. I don't know. Rifle also, yeah, it looks like they brought it up just marginally. Rifle's pretty bad damage-wise for the fact that you should be using it alone since it recharges alone. Yeah, that's fine. I think it's slightly better than Katana now, but is mutually exclusive with other ammo items as the cost for that slight betterness. So cool. Sextant fits an issue with Turbo Sextant not having the correct value. Okay. Shark Claws. Damage 10, 20, 30, 40 instead of 12, 18, 24, 30. So that is a decent amount of flat. And then scaling damage 10, 20, 30, 40 from 3, 6, 9, 12. That's big. You will absolutely see Shark Claws on weapons Vanessa now. You already did when somebody, was just buying all the weapons. Now it'll stay on there for a while. But the big thing here that is not in the patch notes, because again, they never talk about how these things affect monsters, is that Lone Shark just got terrifying. Holy crap, Lone Shark's broken. He's got 2 of these bastards. So he is, his damage scaling is off the chart. Already, he does like 5 hastes at the start of combat, like fairly progressively, and so inside of 14 or 16 seconds, I never remember the math, his Shark Ray gets kind of overwhelming and starts hitting you really hard. So if you didn't close out that fight in the first half, in the first 20 seconds, you started losing. Now he's a clock fight. I will do the math. I will put this in the guide, in the pig guide, to let you know like the moment at which you start dying. But I'm pretty sure it's around 14 seconds. I'm pretty sure you have to beat him inside of 14 seconds before he just absolutely kills you. This is nuts. Lone Shark is now very, very strong. So be very careful on that fight. And then immediately after, of course, he added 10 flat to Shark Ray. And then there's some Shark Ray damage scaling that increases at gold and diamond, which this might make its way into a couple of like single weapon Shark Ray boards. I've seen him every once in a while, but he's a little slow for that to make sense with the increased scaling at the higher levels. Maybe. I don't know if that's going to make a big change to him. It's only the flat that we care about in the fight. I think we get him at silver. We fight him at silver, if I'm not mistaken. Let's look him up. Let me make sure I'm not lying to you. It's best not to lie to you. Lone Shark. Nope, it's gold. God damn it, it's gold. Which means, sorry about that, it means that it's not only 10 flat, but it also gets 10 extra scaling, which will add to 50 more damage because he only has 10 haste, or he only has 5 total hastes on his board. So that'll be 50 from there and then 10 more flat. So 60 more damage every time Shark Ray hits your face towards the end of the fight. That's not much, but he was already scaling pretty hard. Like, you would feel it towards the end of that fight because we don't have a lot of hit points by then. Anyway, proceed with caution. Lone Shark is a bouncer. He's hard. Take care. Silencer no longer has a tech type. Okay. Not sure I ever noticed or cared. Torpedo is down 8 seconds, and the damage scaling has gotten harder. The few times I've seen Torpedo, it usually was doing some effective shit to my face. I assume someone was high rolling on their board, but who knows? So this scares me a little bit, but a Vanessa player will be able to tell you better if that means anything. Tropical Island enchantments are updated to scale on this item's regeneration. I'm curious to see if Mac has items that affect other items' regeneration rates, and if that would ever have some whatever. But Tropical Island, usually you just keep for the coconuts. It's not really something I've seen played very often. Vanessa's amulet now gets enchanted with shiny, has double crit bonus, and obsidian when you crit deal 10 damage, which is awful. Cool. Wanted poster is now only 1 XP in the stash, which I think is good because Vanessa level scaling has been a little off the charts. In late game, you'd see Vanessa's like 4 levels higher than you, and it wouldn't matter. So cool. That yeah, you should have to pay the cost of putting that on your board, and then making me feel really embarrassed when you beat me with it in order to get the extra XP scaling. I'm fine with that. Dually items. If you thought I didn't know much about Vanessa, I know less about dually. So again, only really going to have good insights as to when this is going to affect a fight, but I will talk about it. Alpha Rays, they've upped its cooldown time, and then they've increased its flat damage. And when you use another core ray or weapon, they've increased the amount of damage it adds to scaling. So this pretty much has always just been used as a scaler for your weapons boards, as I understand it, and that's got progressively stronger than it used to be. But it is a little bit slower, so you're either going to have to figure out how to charge Alpha Ray, or on the whole, it looks like it'll only gain a little bit of total weapon scaling. You always kind of paid for it at the cost of like it being the slowest item on your board, so you were getting a little bit more in combat scaling at the cost of not charging your core or other items as much, and so I think they just leaned more into that. Freeze an item for 1/2 seconds instead of freeze one small item for 1-2 seconds. You're going to see this a lot. They're undoing the small item freeze changes on a lot of items, which is terrifying. And they're doing it mostly with Dooley, which is fair because I think freezes a little bit of his identity, and also kind of how Dooley survives late game. So that's okay. I hate it because, my shit's getting frozen, but that seems fair enough. Charcoal, I don't even know who this guy is. 8 seconds from 9. The burn is increased pretty drastically, a little bit progressively, and the burn scaling is increased progressively. Sure, the fact that I don't know who they are means they haven't been oppressive until now. We'll see if that changes. Those numbers don't scare me particularly. Claw Arm is now available at silver, and it was always like damage scaling to adjacent when some conditions met. I forget which one. I haven't seen it run very much at gold. We'll see if people run it at silver, if it makes sense on day 2 or something. Maybe it's one of those things that makes sense as an early item. Cool. Clarence, who I have played around with, has had his damage scaling increase, which is cool. Clarence was always like a weaker Bellalista, so maybe he actually gets some play. Combat core scaling 15, 30, 45. So combat core is more damage now. Might be why I've seen combat core like 3 or 4 times already. So cool. I think the flat damage on combat core is fair to go up quite a bit, as long as they don't mess too much with how much flat damage he adds to other items. So I'm totally fine with that. Coolant, not that anyone cares if I'm fine or not fine with dually changes. Coolant is down and freeze 1, 2, 3 items for 1 second instead of 1 item for 1, 2, 3 seconds. So again, moving it to more of a trigger item than a like perma freeze. Although at 5 seconds, with all the other charge shenanigans they're getting, they might get some mileage out of perma freezing your board with this. And there's the new beetle and there's other stuff. Yeah. DJ Robot only spawns 1 nanobot on purchase instead of 3, so you will no longer have day 2 full DJ Robot boards, which was a little oppressive. I didn't see it very often, though, because it's still not a super common item. But, okay, cool. It's now going to take some real work to get your DJ Robot up to speed, but Dooley got a lot more interesting, weird friend shit happening in his new items package, and so making sure that the nanobots were in line with that makes a lot of sense to me. So great. Duct tape cooldown 6 from 7. When you use the item on the left of this, shield 5, 10, 15 from adjacent items. So this is a big change to duct tape. It's only getting charge by one side instead of both sides. And the cooldown reduction, I feel like if you're going to do that, you should bring the cooldown all the way to like 4 so it's usable. Duct tape just slows. It doesn't inherently shield itself. It only shields when adjacent. And so I would kind of like the identity for it to be a usable slow at like 4 seconds. At 6 seconds even, it's still not usable. You're still only using it for the shield effect. And now you only get to put matchbox or bushel on one side of it, which means that this is another hit to our matchbox setup. Not that we always ran duct tape, but when we did, then you could play your matchbox a little deeper into the day 8s, and now you can't. So, yeah, matchbox hit pretty hard. I don't know why this is in the dually section, by the way, since duct tape is no longer a dually item, but that's a little neither here nor there. This looks cool. Fuel rod redesign. I don't know if you ever watched Kripparrian, but his long-standing joke is like, the chat is like, fuel rod, you have to get it because it's so OP, because he jokes that fuel rod is the worst item in the game. I don't think it was, but it was definitely debatable. It's now fully redesigned. This is now a medium duct tape. Starts at silver tier, haste adjacent items 1, 2, 3 seconds. When you use an adjacent item, shield 5, 10, 15. So if you thought duct tape was broken, now it has the opportunity cost of 2 slots instead of 1 slot. But it's also hasting the items that are spamming the shield from duct tape. By the way, of the adjacent items that could be shielding is your shield core. So color me terrified. Hot damn, is this item not gonna ruin my life? Yeah, I think this single-handedly makes Shield Core one of the better cores in the game, and we're gonna go back to the days, not that we ever left them, of Force Field Shield Core slam me to death builds. That were weakened a decent amount by the defense grid change, where you had to use an item before defense grid procs so that it wasn't start a combat murder me. It was now like 4 seconds till you murder me. But you still always, if you didn't kill me quickly and I got to start peppering your shield, then I survived. And this is next to your shield cord, which is increasing its total shield effect. And yeah. And this is hasting it and the other item to the right of it, which presumably is going to be your force shield. I think this is broken as hell. Again, I don't play dually. I know very little about dually. I could be terribly wrong. I don't think I am. I'm going to hate this. Everyone's going to hate this. But cool, fuel rod's no longer a joke. That's going to be a very real comment that Crip's chat's making at him now. Hamlet. Cooldown reduced 8, or cooldown increased to 8 from 7. When you slow, charge this 2 seconds from 1 second. So they're doubling the charge it gets from slow and increasing its cooldown. It's really only been LED that's been an effective slow for dually. And even then they fixed it so it wasn't as spammy. It used to be able to get it to like every second, and then they reduced it so it's only like 1 out of 4 seconds a couple of patches ago. And so he doesn't have a lot of slow, but one of the new beetles coming into his package is a slow that at Diamond is a multi-item slow. It slows like 3 or 4 items. And then that can be triggered by different effects on the left and right of it. So he's about to get a very strong slow trigger item in his new package, and so Hamlet might be a thing. Hamlet might absolutely be usable. Slow charges 2 seconds, so I think that one item every time it procs, and again, you can get it to charge off of other items adjacent to it, can just get Hamlet to instacast. So that might be a pretty cool combo. Again, I don't know dually, so I'll have to watch to see how it plays out, but I have a feeling this is going to bash me in the face a couple of times, and I will learn very quickly that it's pretty good. Armadillo, they brought his mid and late game numbers back up a little bit there. They nerfed some shield stuff pretty hard, and then Armadillo fell off as a result, and so they're bringing Armadillo itself back up. I'm okay with that. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Plus, the fuel rod, or not the fuel rod. Yeah, no, fuel rod. Yeah, the medium duct tape, the medium duct tape with haste adjacent. That's there going to be some armadillo combos. Actually, that might be a thing. Okay, again, I'm terrified. Ice 9000 returns. I don't think I was around when this item was in the game, but it's a poison and freeze item, and when you use a friend, give it poison for the fight, and this is going to pair with some of the new friend scarabs that charge when the left or right item poisons or freezes. So it might see a little bit of play there, but at 9 seconds, I'm not terribly terrified. That's okay scaling, but that's a pretty slow cooldown. So we'll see if that makes any play. Uh, Gamma Ray, flat poison has gone up and its scaling has gone up, and now it's basically mirrors Omega Ray, but for poison. And again, there's now scarabs that poison, and so there's scarabs that poison, so this can ramp them. And then there's scarabs that trigger when you have a poison item, so this could be adjacent to them and charge them. So cool, that's fine. I'm not sure I'm worried Poison Dooley's gonna take the meta by storm, but it might be a hipster build, so we'll see. Kinetic Cannon, on the other hand, they've increased the damage. This one's never been in the right spot exactly, hasn't really seen a lot of play. I'm not entirely sure how strong it's going to be on Dooley, but I will tell you that weapons platform monster now hits. Like, you feel it. It feels different. The amount of time you get to kill that monster has dropped by about 5 to 10 seconds. So be slightly careful with the weapons platform. I have a feeling they just did a pass on items in the toolkits of the rightmost monsters that didn't feel strong enough and buffed them, because the rightmost monsters have all progressively gotten quite a bit spookier. So this is one of those. Weapons platform is not a win anymore. He kind of hits. I think you could still race him on most builds. Not a huge problem. But if you're going, there's a lot of times where you're just a little weak because you're doing your property transition and you're debating which monster you can take, and you're like, oh, good, that's the gold monster. I can still take him. That might not be the case. If you're debating what monster you could take, he might no longer be in the auto pick pile. Lens. Charge another tech item, 1-2 seconds from the core gains 5 to 10 damage for the fight. So this feels like a complete redesign. It charges tech items. I don't know that item well enough to know its timing and whatnot to know if that'll make any play, but it's not in any monster, so I currently don't care. I might care later. Motherboard redesign, cooldown 5 seconds, haste adjacent items 1-2-3 seconds. When you use adjacent tech item, charges 1 second. So haste adjacent, and then it is charged by adjacent, and core is an adjacent item. So it could be like hasting the core and then charging off the core. I'm not sure how good that is, since Dooley was never really hurting for haste, or for ways to haste the core, but maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's still probably a medium item, so I don't know how great that is, but a Dooley Silo will hop into the chat and let us know if that's any good. Nitrogen Hammer cooldown 10, deals 200 damage, freeze one item for 1 or 2 seconds. When you freeze, charge this 1 second, and this gains 100 to 200 damage for the fight. So, items. Nitrogen Hammer. Who is this on? It's not so. Oh, Frost Street Champion. So Frost Street Champion just got nuts. Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly how different this is than what it was, because I can't remember what it was, but I remember it not being much. But Frost Street Champion does a decent amount of freeze. He doesn't do a lot of freeze. I think this might be one of 2 items of his that freeze. So he might be okay. If this was on, a Chili Charles or somebody that freeze spammed your face off, it would be cracked. But I do think that this means that fight does not run all the way to the end of Sandstorm, he might be able to kill you because 100 damage is a lot. So he might be able to kill you sooner. Yeah, we'll see. That's a gold item on a day 2 or 3 bronze monster, though, so that feels really weird. Or no, 3 or 4. Still, that feels really weird. That's an item level that drops at day 5 on a monster that's before that day. So I'm not sure that happens yet, so that's interesting. Peer Conditioner starts at cold tier, cooldown 8 from 6, so they raise the cooldown. Freezes 1 to 2 items for 1 second. When you use a friend or the core, charge this 1 second. So they just made him a little bit slower, which is fine because, I've hated this item for a long time because it's part of a permafreeze board, so I'm okay with that. Railgun damage back up a little bit to kind of make up for when they took off multicast. It died a little hard. I'm not sure this is enough to bring it back. I mean, they don't want it back to its former glory because it was a little too glorious, but it's a little bit. It brings it closer. It might see some real play now. Remote control. They just lowered the cooldown on remote control. I haven't seen that used very much. That's fine. Uzi is really interesting. They've hit the ammo from 12 down to scaling up to 12 at Diamond, and then just flattened out the damage higher. But Uzi is a trigger weapon. It's almost entirely used to get some mileage out of your core by having a very fast item. And you never cared. If the fight wasn't over by the time you ran out of bullets, then you lost, so you didn't care. And now that matters. Now the fight will be over. This is only 12 seconds because it fires every 2. And so this very much is not going to make it to the end of your combat window at bronze and silver. So this is a decent nerf to some triggers of the core early for Dooley when they managed to get Uzi. I think that's okay. That item just felt like a 2-second cast time. You almost never paid attention to the ammo, so at least you have to pay attention to the ammo. I feel like that feels better. Weak point detector is a little slower, but with better damage scaling. This does affect a monster, but I don't think it affects it enough that we care. So weak point detector is on Scout Trooper and Burninator Bot and Boss Harrow. It's on a lot of folks. So on Burninator Bot, Pylon slowing every 4 seconds. So that might be a decent amount. So the whole point of weak point detector is that it charges when you slow. And so increasing the cooldown doesn't matter too much if you have a lot of slows charging, because you're still going to get it to pop off roughly the same amount of times. And then the damage scaling being higher matters. On this, it's scaling Flamethrower, but honestly, this fight's a bit of a pushover for the gold tier. So I think it's definitely going to be stronger now, but I don't think it's going to be enough stronger that it's going to change your calculus most of the time. That doesn't seem like a big deal just because that fight doesn't have too much slow. It only has the 1 slow trigger, even though it's every 4 seconds. Scout Trooper, on the other hand, this will give him a little bit more damage. He is day 3 and he's pretty easy, and he falls off once his Bullas and Grappling Hook stop spamming weak point detector anyway. So Bullas loses its charges. And so it only scales it twice, and Grappling Hook then continues to scale, but it's slow. So you got a tiny bit stronger, but again, not enough that I think you care. Generally speaking, I don't think this changes actually. It is affecting a couple of monsters, but not enough that we give a crap about. And then Welding Torch has moved from a flat to a winding down cooldown, slightly higher at bronze, and then otherwise gets faster, and then it is now a flat damage instead of a scaling damage. I don't know that item well enough to know or care. Mac items. So this is not the new Mac items. This is just the Mac items we're aware of that were already in the game. And every single one of these belong to a monster. So this very much affects some things that we care about. Bottled Lightning. has been really scaled down. At silver is the one we care about, so it's half damage at silver, and its fire damage is halved at silver, and that means that the apprentice, what the hell's his name? Um, 1 second, I have him here. The Dabbling Apprentice was the most terrifying bronze fight in the game. Like, it was broken. It was stupid. It was a bronze fight that was a gold fight. Now it's a bronze fight that's a silver fight. So he's not nearly as terrifying as he used to be. That's good, because that fight was bait. So we're really happy about that change. Fireclaw starts at silver tier. Burn 6, 9, 12. So the total flat burn has gone nowhere. It just is no longer available bronze. But the item has burn equal to a percentage of your non-fire claw items from 100. So 50, 70, 100% of the burn of your non-fire claw items. So this is nerfed. Yeah, this is just generally nerfed. It doesn't matter too much, though. We were like, where I want this to matter is on Dragon, because Dragon is at 14 seconds. He hits you with 300 fire damage claw and you die. But Dragon does it scaling via skills, not that the fire claw is gaining fire from other items. There's a couple of other monsters, the Infernal, the Infernal Envoy, and one more, the guy with the sword, or the one with the spear, the one with the sword, and the other one, that have the claws, but the claws again are not getting a lot of extra fire damage from the other items on their board. They're just mostly dumping fire onto you or getting fire damage flat from their skills. So they will be fractionally weaker, but I went up against Infernal and got my ass handed to me. I kind of knew I was weak for that fight, but I took it just to make sure that he still felt terrifying. He still feels terrifying, so this change isn't enough to really change your calculus on which of those fights you shouldn't take. Magnus's Femur, renamed and now has the relic type. There are very few items with this. This is a new... not really. I was going to say, you can now hunt for this for Bob. Don't hunt for this for Bob. If you have three stash slots to waste on a single tag for Bob, then you're playing Bob better than I am, and you don't need my help. I don't know how you can do that. So it's too big of an item for that tag to matter for us, but maybe they'll make hay out of relic at some point. Myrrh, gain generation, or actually they just scaled the regen instead of flat regen. We only ever got this item off of a monster fight. We never ever used it, and we still won't. Palanquin, they fixed a problem with shiny Palanquin. Is it Palanquin also? It's not listed here, but it was last time. Palanquin got the dragon tag. The dinosaur tag. But that was last time. And there are very few things with Dino Tag in the game, but again, it's 3 slots. We wouldn't waste 3 slots in our stash for a Bob board. Pendulum, they removed the crit chance bonus, so now it's just charge the adjacent item when you use an adjacent item. We occasionally use this on a model board while we were waiting to get the perfect items on the board. We will still occasionally use this. It's not going to change anything. The enchants are now when you use an adjacent item, and the enchants are kind of spicy, but you will not be dropping your enchant on this item because it's not a permanent fixture on your board. So the only time this matters is when you have an enchanted bootstraps in this. That's very few runs. Poppy Field starts at silver. When you use a weapon, poison is the same. They just remove the bronze. And your weapons have damage equal to 50, 75, 100% poison on your enemy. So this is just a generic nerf to Poppy Field. Not sure why. That item hasn't been run very much. It isn't terribly oppressive. I have a feeling it's just because of the play that it gets with other Mac stuff. Because Poison Mac is a little strong. Poison Mac's early game, at least, has been kicking the crap out of me. So cool. Runic Double Bow, the item you could sell 30% of your hit points for a crappy bow, has become a fractionally less crappy bow that you could sell 30% of your hit points for, and never should. Cooldown 6 seconds. Is that right, or am I reading? Nope, cooldown 8 seconds from 7. It went up. Sorry, I'm a little blind. The crit chance dropped. The flat damage has increased a teeny tiny bit, and it deals double crit damage. And the reason this matters is because Runic Axe, your lifesteal weapons have a 100% crit chance. There's a bunch of effects that are now affecting lifesteal stuff. So they did a little bit of tweakage to all the lifesteal items, Runic Double Bow included, including like lifesteal now counts as heal. And so, yeah. So this feels, actually this is a nerf because it's lower damage at the higher tier also. So yeah, this is not going to actually affect your fights at all, even though a couple of monsters have this. And the Runic Axe act change, I think, makes the, what's the big death monster guy? Hold on. Again, I have this written down too. Death Knight Reaper. Scythe used to give it double damage. It now gives it 100% crit chance, which is another way of giving it double damage. None of its items have double damage from crit, and therefore them getting crit chance from this isn't. It's just giving double damage to all of your items. I'm pretty sure. I re-looked at it again, but I'm pretty sure. This is actually a reduction in total damage because Death Knight Reaper already had a crit chance skill. So it was getting double, all of the lifesteal weapons were getting double damage from this, and then they all had 20 crit on top of that. Now they just have the regular damage and 100% crit. So the total amount of damage feels like it's been reduced by about 20% on that monster. I have tried to fish for him, but I haven't gotten the fight yet, so I cannot confirm if that's exactly true. But I think that the general net from this is he got mildly less terrifying. He still probably heals back to full every time he hits your face, though. So if you can't kill him inside of 7 seconds, or 11 seconds is when he swings his big one, you still probably can't kill him. Okay, so Cinders, Extract, Sharpening Stone, all of these buff, poison, weapon, and fire damage loot items are all now available at bronze. This means that they are fishable from, so now we can actually fish Sharpening Stone from bronze. Why do I not have words? Boomerang. That's great. Bronze Boomerang is now fractionally useful. I didn't like it at bronze. At silver, it started being powerful. Now we can start fishing some fodder for it, Lottle. That's great. This also means Curio got weirder. And that Curio can now have all of these loot items. So Curio can have the poison, the cinders, or the sharpening stone. Not necessarily a buff, not necessarily not. Just depends on what you were going to Curio for. But now we can get flat weapon damage. And then sharpening stone generally gained more damage. They just scaled it down one tier and added another tier on the back end. So that's great for us in terms of flat stacking on it, Lottle. So anyway. The thing they don't mention that this change impacts is that Curio now has them, so that's cool. Dragonheart fixed an issue where burn items charged twice. I wonder if that was a bug or happened every time. If so, does it mean he no longer hits me for 300 fire damage at 14 seconds? If so, huzzah! But I will have to take the fight to find out if that's the case. So yeah, that might change how deadly that encounter is. Not sure if it does or doesn't, but I will take the fight for you and let you know as soon as I find out. And then Senderer, this is the item that removes shield. It's a neutral weapon, and when it hits, it removes shields from shield items of your enemy. You pick this up at Curio sometimes. It got a little bit more flat damage. It's now mildly attractive for like day one fights. If you go to Curio on day one, all of his stuff sucks, and so this is now probably one of the better weapon pickups if you're trying to put your board together. That's great. And fix an issue with several items, deadly enchants. Cool. Okay, skills. First strike now gives 50 and 75 damage. This is one of the worst skills in the game, where you get 30% crit chance, and then every time you use an item, your crit chance goes down. And so this was just like permanently don't have crit chance on your items. It sucked. Now it means at 50 or 75%, theoretically, if you have had no time whatsoever to stack any other crit on your items, and you want to grab this skill for your single weapon bonk board, that's it. Single weapon bonk board. So we're talking your pawn shop, your belt, and your double whammy. Then this is now usable once. That board only needs to swing once, so that's fine. I don't know how you did that board and didn't get yourself up to 50% crit chance. You weren't picking your skills correctly if you did, but if you pivot into this really late and haven't gotten any crit skills, you now might not just completely scoff at first strike. But if you have 3 or 4 more days left to go, you still would, because you should be able to get better crit than this. Just going to the, what's it called? Property Baron, you can get 50% crit chance off of one skill permanently for your large item. So this is hot garbage, and every time you use any item, you lose crit chance. This is still steaming piles of poop, but now theoretically has a single use, which is you will only hit once with the one item that you use on your board. Cool! Great. I would still much rather they throw this in the dung heap, and then I have one less crappy skill clogging up my board. Okay, so there's a collection of improved toxins: initial dose, final dose, fiery, immolating spark, and final flame. These are all your rightmost, leftmost, poison, burn, etc. gains fire damage. They have all been scaled down they've all been scaled down a decent amount. This is just so at gold tier, they all have lost half-ish. No, I guess only 33% at some of these gold tiers. But it's so that the gold tier skill that people have been picking, which has been really dominant, is weaker, because these ones specifically have been overpowered. I'm not sure it's enough, but it's something. I mean, if you add 6 flat fire damage onto your matchbox, like, good game. Like, you now just, it says win till day 6 is what that skill says. I'm not sure this changes. It just means it's not oppressive until day 8. Yay! So it's a needed change. I'm not sure it's enough, but cool. Searing Flames, when one of your burn items gain haste. If it already has haste, it gains 1, 2, 3 burn for the fight. This seems weirdly conditional, and I'm not sure we would ever get any use out of it for sure, because we don't have a lot of haste. When one of your weapons gains haste, if it already has haste, it gains flat damage for the fight. Again, very weird condition. This feels like Vanessa, so I'm not sure if it already is just Vanessa items, Vanessa skills that are being tweaked, but she's the only one. I guess Dooley also has enough haste to make use of something like that, but it ain't us, so that doesn't apply to us. So that's it. I'm sorry. This has been long as hell. Those were a lot of patch notes. But that is all of them. However, really quick, let me pull up my side document with a couple of notes just to make sure I didn't miss anything, because there were a couple more undocumented changes in the game. 1, Banana Ball has a new skill. He has a skill now. So the first time you overheal each fight, haste your items for 2 seconds. So it's not terrible. We'd actually get a tiny bit of use out of it. It's not start of combat haste, but it is a beginning of ramp haste. So it's not tragically bad, but it does weaken his pool drop. He was obviously the best because he could get duct tape, but also even Banana Ball from him gave you the food item for the tiny furry monster encounter. And so going to him only had a 1 in 3 chance of whiffing, which was the med kit, which totally sucked. But at least if you got the Banana Ball, you were set for tiny furry monster, so you didn't have to waste some shopping money on that. Or duct tape was obviously really strong. This now means I'm not sure this is a whiff, but you're not rooting for it because, yeah. But, I think it's still useful. It's 2 seconds of haste at the very beginning of combat ramp. It's just 2 seconds of haste over the whole fight isn't a lot, and uh, our heal boards, our boards that are going to make use of this, go long. So it's not like they're starting a combo that's going to kill them faster in the front of the fight because our heal boards aren't start a combat killers. So it's fine. It's not terrible. I think it generally makes Banana Bowl fractionally weaker to us. They said in the patch notes that you can go to someone else's when you do the PvP fights, you go to someone else's board now, so you get to see their board. Most people have the same board, but cool, we get to go to their board. What they didn't say, which is really cool, is you get to hear their soundtrack. I don't know if you know this, but one of the very, very, very rare drops you can get from chests is a new soundtrack. I have only ever seen the Vanessa one. I don't have it, but I've seen it. And just today, I went into somebody else's board and I got to listen to the cool Vanessa combat soundtrack while I was on their board. So that's an undocumented change that I thought was pretty fun. And there appears to be some changes to duplicate items at shops, which is huge if true. And I've gotten confirmed a couple of times on a post of mine, but I haven't seen it myself. Which is if you have, say, a silver item, you could go to the shop and see it at bronze, or you could go to the shop and see it at gold. It used to be exclusive. You could not see it at a shop. You could get it from a random item vendor, but not from like a shop where you could go purchase and select the item. And now it appears that you can. This is pretty big. It's a pretty big change. I don't know what implications it has on monster drops because the same rules used to apply to monster drops. If you had the same item a tier lower or a tier higher, you could exclude it from their monster pool. So if they fix that, then fishing for property baron skills and stuff is going to be a lot harder. So it could have very real implications if that happens. I don't know what it means for skills. If you get a skill at gold, can you drop the silver version of the skill to kind of pair up on that? I doubt it. That would be terrifyingly broken in some situations, but if they made the change in one place and didn't announce it, this change could be elsewhere. So look out for it. Let me know if you find out anything about it, either in the comments here or in our Discord channel. And as always, the links to the Discord are below, so if you want to talk about any of this, you can throw it in the comments or throw it in the Discord. But also, I'm going to put a link to a post that I put on Reddit about all the undocumented changes. I list all of the monster changes that are affected by the particular fight, and then I also list some things like the Sharpening Stone being in the Curio Shop or Banana Ball having a new skill or all of that stuff. All of the undocumented changes I listed in the Reddit, and people are commenting new ones, so that'll be kept up to date. So I will throw that link in the video description below so that you can head over there, and that'll be an up-to-date list of all the undocumented changes to the patch notes. That's everything. I'm sorry. That was exhausting. But I hope you got something out of it. And leave me a comment either way letting me know what you think of the skills, especially if there's something I missed for the other heroes that might be particularly scary for us that I need to be aware of. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you later in the Bazaar.